this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Another Sunday chat. Another week gone. Another week closer to winter. And farther away from summer, I suppose. Yeah, season's moving on. As it's Sunday, we'll do the business. Thanks to all my subscribers. Anyone watching who isn't subscribed, it would be appreciated if you could do so. Costs you nothing. It's just a little box you tick and it helps the channel grow, as does the old thumbs up like button. Those things YouTube monitor, they watch, and if they sort of stay static, YouTube takes its mindset to thinking, well, that channel's not growing much, we won't bother much with that. Whereas if it sees growth, then it's prepared to help, you know, sort of pushes you up the searches and all that sort of stuff. So that's that. Subscribers and like thing. What else? We're not going to have a good day today. I'm half asleep, despite it being whatever it is, 10 o'clock, nearly 10:30. The sun's coming round, we've got some sun today. It might not last the day, but get a bit of heat in here. This is the time now when the patrons come into their own. Obviously my mum's passed away now, that's done and dusted, so to speak. My sisters are arranging the funeral and a little sort of gathering afterwards, so I don't need to get involved with that apart from being there, obviously. I've got a few people I need to contact and tell, then that'll be done. But on that front, obviously I'll now be progressing the paperwork and dealing with tax people and that sort of thing towards the goal of actually eventually selling this place and moving out, which, as I said, is where the patrons come in, because that's some financial help for that process when we get there, well, and continuing afterwards probably. So that's that. The other little thing that you can do now and again, if you think it's suitable, is when, obviously there are people who watch most of my videos, some people watch all of them, some people watch one and go away and never come back. That's the YouTube world, we live within that. But every now and again I would imagine you get a video that's particularly good for you about a subject that you needed perhaps a bit of information or a bit of help with or something like that. And that's what the buy me a coffee thing is for. It's like leaving a tip. You know, like when you have a nice meal in a restaurant and the waitress was particularly nice to you, or the head waiter was really good with the wine or something, you leave a tip. That's what that buy me a coffee is for. A one-off small amount for a tip. So that's the money side of things. You'll all be pleased to know that the change I did to the adverts is working well. And I hope it's not too much of an inconvenience for you. Switching to only having skippable ads, so you don't ever get any long ones that you can't get out of, without coming right out of the video, obviously. That, I think, was a nice touch, and in addition to that, allowing those mid-roll ads has made a lot of difference to the income from that. That, combined with the patron, means I'm not frightened to death of moving house now and having to pay rent. I'll manage, shall we say. On that front, we have, I haven't done it for some time because there was no point. I'm reliably told by people who know and who've been through all this that this process to get to the point where a property can be sold, i.e. if we get probate granted, is a minimum of 3 months, yeah, from the start point, which is like now really. So that's quite a while, and it could take quite a bit longer. I don't think it will, because I don't think we'll get any hassles or hold-ups, because we have a simplistic process. We've got nothing complicated. Everything's written down, everybody knows who's doing what and everything, and I think it should go through reasonably straightforward. So that's that part of it. But the part about me moving and going somewhere else, if you remember a while back, I went to look at a property on a large country estate that did have a conservatory. It was in woodland. It had its own woodland walk to go with the property, access to the estate, I could spend most of my time without leaving the boundaries of the estate and be happy. There's even wild orchids on the premises, like, so it had an awful lot going for it. I didn't get to go inside because the tenants at the time had managed to catch COVID, hadn't they? So obviously the interior was totally out of bounds. And then it got taken off the market, firstly because they were ill, and secondly because the property they were buying was in a chain, and the chain collapsed. So they effectively lost the property they were buying and had to back out. Well, that property's back on the market. I had a look yesterday for something to do. I just thought, right, we'll have a look round and see what's about. And that property's back up again. And it says it's available 24th of November or earlier by negotiation. I wouldn't want it any earlier. But now you have to sort of stop and think. If we're looking at, say, 3 to 4 months from now, beginning of October, 24th of November is quite a way down that road, yeah? And if I don't start thinking about getting somewhere soon, I may miss somewhere like this that to me is a bit special. So I might have to take the bull by the horns and go for this one this time, actually go for it, and make arrangements and everything, just to make sure I secure it, basically. The trouble is with renting, the agents do quite a bit of the work checking you out to make sure you can pay. They're not trying to make sure that you dress well or anything like that, or you actually keep the place clean and tidy. All they care about is can you pay. And I don't look that good when you start checking out my finances, because my income, my official income are my pensions, which wouldn't be anywhere near enough to take that property. I wouldn't even get a look in. So I have to do words, I have to do explanations, and I thought a way of securing a property from a landlord's point of view, I think my credit check should be okay. I've got a good credit rating because I haven't had any debts. So that part should be okay, but the proof of income side of things like that might get a bit difficult. But the way round that is to just offer 3 months rent in advance. Oh, I'll just pay 3 months up front. That should do it, yeah? With a commitment to pay the next 3 months in advance. How about that then? We'll run with that, shall we? And see if that works. But I will phone them up tomorrow, being a weekday, they'll be open, and arrange to go again. That shows my interest, my real interest, because I've already been once, spent quite a long time chatting with the landlord, but obviously didn't see the inside of the property. Now I've still got some things to think about on the inside that I didn't get to see, therefore I didn't talk about, like what sort of heating is it? Because to me, one of the rooms, okay, it's a bedroom, has got one of those little convector electric heaters. Well, they ain't cheap to run, but then in a bedroom, you don't need a bedroom warm all the time, do you? That's where central heating is so wasteful. When my central heating comes on, it heats the rooms that the radiators are in and switched on. Well, so like if I have the heating on during the day because I'm a bit chilly, I'm heating the bedroom up. Well, I'm not using it, am I? But nobody goes around turning radiators on and off, each day, so you end up being wasteful. Whereas if you've got a little heater that is in the bedroom, unless it was really, really cold, I probably wouldn't bother using it. Because when I go to bed, I go to bed. I don't muck about with things in the bedroom. I get undressed and go to bed. Well, chuck an extra blanket on. Get nice and cosy and warm. You don't need the room to be warm, do you? And it's the same when I get up in the morning. I get up and go out of the bedroom. Bathroom or whatever. Downstairs, kitchen, coffee stuff. I don't need the bedroom to be warm. So if that's the only heating in there, that's not a downer. But we do have to look at the lounge area where I would spend most of my time. Now it's got an open fire, which I'm really looking forward to. Getting back to having a log fire of an evening when it's really cold and crisp outside. That's smashing. But that's the only form of heat in the lounge. That's not so good. To have to run an open fire you know, to keep yourself warm in the winter all day long gets pretty expensive because of the wood. Yeah. So some pointers, you know, I didn't actually measure the size of the conservatory because the chances are all of what's in here won't fit, so something's going to have to go. Now, does it actually have to go, or do I utilise part of the house and use a bright window to have some orchids in the house? Yeah. So some thoughts to go in, but first thing is to find out whether I can go and visit again. See, now I had a long chat with the landlord. If the landlord has decided he doesn't want me as the tenant, then I presume he's told the agent, and the agent will tell me. So that one's off the cards, sort of thing. But I'll make inquiries, I'll try and visit again and get to see the inside and chat to the tenants. Things like running costs. Have they got decent internet? You know, the sort of things, the functionality of a place. I mean, I already found out quite a bit about it last time round, so I can still get my main shopping delivered, which is a big bonus, because it is in the middle of nowhere, this place, it really is. And I think that's going to put an awful lot of people off. It really is in the middle of nowhere. You know, you're a long way from your nearest little local shop. It's a car ride, and it's probably 10-15 minutes in the car to get to the nearest little shop. And the nearest big town is quite a long way away for those people who like shopping and stuff like that. So some people might be put off, but we shall see. So that's that. I'll keep you posted on that, obviously. But from the finances point of view, because it's a place I would like, I would be prepared to be paying rent on it and keeping this place going as well. Because my commitment here is to carry on paying the bills, because I live here, until such time as it's sold. That's my commitment to this place, sort of thing. And at some point I might have to discuss with the others what we're going to do, because obviously I need to move out, and if I'm going to start paying for another place from whatever, end of November, then I would prefer to actually be living in it and getting settled in and everything like that. I mean, I might leave it till after Christmas, because I know what I'm doing here for Christmas, but it might be nice to have a Christmas in my new place, you know, with a nice log fire going. That'll remind my three of the days in the house where I used to live, because I used to get up really early and get the fire going, so that we had a nice glowing fire when they came down, and then they sat in front of the fire and opened their presents as children, so that was quite good. That remains to be seen, but I might try and do a deal with them whereby if I'm going to move out but we're not ready to sell, that's not my fault. You see what I mean? So perhaps some contributions from the others while this place is empty might be worth discussing. If they say no, it's your problem, you took the house on, then so be it, but it's got to be worth asking, hasn't it? So that's that. But as I said, it's, you know, there could be a period where I'm actually running two properties, which is going to get flipping expensive. So that's where, as I said, the patrons come into their own, because that's a regular contribution. So it tops up my monthlies to be able to pay such things like excess expense of running two places at the same time. Hopefully that wouldn't go on for very long. We shall see. So that's that. Looking around, I found another 3 properties that would be suitable. This is in 3 counties. This is in Wiltshire, Dorset and Hampshire. 3 counties. This is a huge, vast area. And I found 3 other places that have got the conservatory that would be reasonable. One of them looks absolutely smashing. It's a ground floor flat. What I don't know is when you open the conservatory doors to go into the garden, does that bit of garden go with that flat, or is it communal? And there'll be other people milling around in it, so I don't know that, but it was affordable, that was the main thing. So that's all that stuff, things going on, which buzzes around. I've got the show coming up on Saturday. That's a bit of a faff. I've taken on the treasurer for that society, and the outgoing treasurer usually sits on the door for quite a bit, you know, for people coming in, leaflets and take the money, that sort of stuff. So I need to sit with him for a while so that he can talk through the sort of things he does at the various events that take place, which is not, there's a normal meeting, so that's one type of event. There's a show twice a year, another type of event. There's a Christmas do, another type of event, and a garden party. So there are 4 types of events where a treasurer would need to be involved from a little extent to quite a lot. Like a show is the big one, because you've got pots of money, like there's a pot of money there for the raffle, so that they can give change, a float, if you know it as that sort of term. I think they're doing away with the tombola. There's a float for the door, there's a float for the caterers. All this has got to be accounted for, sort of thing. So I think the show is, and then there's the hire of the place. Who pays for that? It's all these things I've got to get my head round. And the other thing that I need to stay on top of is things like our public liability insurance, our affiliations with the RHS. All those sort of things have to be renewed, and renewal addresses and email addresses need to be changed so that stuff starts coming to me and doesn't go down a black hole somewhere and we lose track of it. So I need to spend time with that guy, which is a bit of a shame because I'm supposed to be going to the show, aren't I? But these things have to be done. And Hannah's coming as well. Do you know, I might have a word with Hannah and see if she really does want to come, or whether she's just coming along because she feels she ought to. Because it would be much easier for me if she didn't come. Bearing in mind, she would be coming down around the 26th of October anyway. Work that one out for yourself. So I might have a chat, because that day would go an awful lot better for me if I was on my own. Because first of all, I could take my plants straight there, because I was thinking last night about the fuel situation. People are still queuing up and all that sort of stuff. So wasting fuel is a daft idea at the moment, just in case you might not be able to replace it. You see what I mean? And I was thinking to actually drive 30-35 miles each way to take a plant to somebody to put in the show for me is a little bit excessive in the, you know, the fuel consumption thing, well, and the cost that goes with it. I don't worry about the time, that's not a problem. So I might have a chat and sort of see if I do that show on my own. The thing is with the Wessex show, Hannah doesn't know many people. She only knows probably 4, maybe 5 of the people that will be there, and she knows some of those quite well, yes. And that's mostly because they're dual members. They're members of Bournemouth as well. But you know, there's a lot of people she just doesn't know, whereas at Bournemouth she knows a lot more, so she feels more comfortable. We'll have a chat about that. We may change plans, but yes, so that show is, well, if I go on my own, it's all day Saturday. If I don't, then it's even longer than all day Saturday, but a lot of it's driving. You know, I've got to drive to Hannah's, drive across to the show, drive back home afterwards. So it's a big driving day with a show in the middle, sort of thing. So we'll have to see about that, I think. I'll have a think about that. Quite honestly, the plans to go to the show, because I know who's going to be there, you will remember the video of the Bournemouth Orchid Society show, the bit where it got to the Golden Rialto. Just prior to that were 2 other orchids. It was a set of 3. So there was a tall one, that I didn't know what sort that was, but that was nice. Then there was a Odontoglossum type pinks colours, and then the Golden Rialto. That was a set of 3. That guy will be at the Wessex show as well. Now, 1 or 2 of those plants may have gone over. If there's still a set of 3, or he's got another one to make a set of 3, he will enter them as a set of 3, which I don't go anywhere near that class. But if he hasn't got them as a set of 3, he will put his best one of that set in the Oncidium class, which is where my little Tolumnia will go. I'll be in direct competition with one of the best Oncidium growers that I know. Yeah, so But you got to go. You know, I still think the taking part's more important than trying to come home with some silverware. It's only somebody else to clean, isn't it? Really? Is it really a big deal? Yeah, so there's that. Strange actually how things come all together. There's a bonsai show at the RHS Wisley grounds on Saturday and Sunday as well. And I wrote down on the calendar, bonsai show. That was in the calendar in the kitchen so that I could sit down. Then when I came into the calendar by the computer, I thought, oh, that's the same flipping weekend as the Orchids show. And Hannah will be down, so I wouldn't be able to go. But if Hannah doesn't come down, I might go to a bonsai show on the Sunday. Depends how cream-crackered I am from the Saturday. But and again, it's a fuel thing. It all uses up fuel. Is there any around? Is it all okay? You know, would I be being silly using up fuel to go to that? So that would be a good video day that day, because I could video the grounds at Wisley. There would be some autumn colours around. The grounds are stunning, absolutely stunning. And then the bonsai show itself, plus they've got orchids in the greenhouses and tropical greenhouses to walk around and stuff, so I'd get an awful lot of video footage there. But anyway, we shall see. These are all possibles. The shows are definite, I'll be going. How and who with, who remains to be seen, so we shall see. Right, as far as a subject for today, I haven't got one. Let's be honest, shall we? I haven't got one. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just lift a few plants up and chat about them. Let me just have a look at the time, because I've been going on quite a bit, haven't I? 20 minutes, so yeah, we've still got at least another 20 to have a look at some plants. Now some of these will be oncidium types, and I will point out this logic of don't feed plants that are doing nothing, but feed and keep up your watering well when stuff is growing. And by growing I mean things like this, as this one's easy to get at, or reasonably easy to get at. Right, that's growing. Yeah, you have a strong new growth pushing up, and it's pushing out roots. That is inactive growth. That needs feeding and watering well. That was watered yesterday. It's damp. It's not bone dry yet because we didn't get any heat yesterday, but it will be by the end of today. So that will need another go tomorrow. But that, you know, that is growing, obviously growing. And luckily the one next to it is a good example of one that isn't. Ugh. Even though it might look like it is, and to a degree it is still, but not as a percentage. New growth, new growth, new growth, new growth up the back, and why I say, you look at it on the surface, you think, well, that's matured, it's finished growing, it's got its pair of leaves, that one's matured, that one's matured. This isn't growing, is it? Ah, what about that little one in there? This one. That's a new growth. It's in active growth. So as a percentage of the whole plant, it's only growing a little bit, but some of these maturing growths could still swell up a bit, so that's still growing. It's also still producing, it's got active roots, got growing root tips. So it is still growing, even though on the surface it looks like it's finished. So you go careful judging something that's finished growing. What else? Things that are coming on. You know, well, it's things I can get at really in some. Whoops, that bounced. That's my problem with this rack that has got plants on both sides. Sometimes you put a hook like that and it goes over the fishing line of the one on the other side. So when you pick it up, you knock the other one down. Flipping careful with that. That's the second time that's happened recently. This was one that I was pleased with its growth last year. It's got a couple of scale on it. 2. Well, it's not exactly an outbreak, is it? But again, I always say, you know, if you see bugs, just kill them there and then. Don't put the plant back with them still alive. Squash the flipping things, just do it. If you're squeamish, get somebody else to do it, or put some flipping gloves on, but don't put a plant back with bugs on it, deal with them. But this one grew on quite nicely last year, and I was quite pleased with these 2 canes, not knowing what to expect from the plant, because it was it was new to me the year before. And in effect, this is 2 plants anyway. It was 2 little kikis, which each grew a new cane. And this year, it's grown 2 new canes, as expected. Three or 4 might have been nice. No scale on those, including right up the tip where the new growth is. Right, but as you can see, these 2 this year's canes are longer than last year's. Yeah, and they are still growing. So this is going to be 2 nice new canes. But where are the blooms going to come? These canes are a bit small. Probably no, although it's still possible to push a node out. Now these canes are probably blooming size, but it's still got its leaves. Now some dendrobiums, they're not happy, they don't bloom very often on a leaved cane. So I don't know whether I'm going to get blooms on these canes next year, but I would think so. I would hope that I'm going to get a few blooms here. It's highly unlikely I'll get blooms on these. These will bloom the following year. So you're always looking 2 years ahead with many dendrobiums, not all, but with many you're looking 2 years ahead. You're looking a year to grow the canes, then they go through the winter, and some bloom that following spring, but some don't. They're on a 2-year cycle, and I think I may have one like that here. This is Dendrobium tortilli, or tortil. It's got an E on the end. Yeah, so I mean it's growing nicely. It's pushed out a mass of new roots all over the mount, so very happy with that one. And when I've got a plant like that, I take no notice of it. What do I need to notice? It gets fed and watered with the rest of my mounts, and come the winter time it'll be dried out considerably and won't get watered that often, and it won't get fed because it won't be growing. Yeah? Shorter days if nothing else. So I don't have to worry about that plant. There's nothing at all to even consider on that plant. I like plants like that. If I do have to sort this grow room out and reduce it down quite a bit to be able to move house, these are the sort of plants that are definitely coming with me. Ones that I don't have to think about. Right, what fell down then? Oh, smashing. What fell down was my Orangus that's in bloom. It bent the hook, so I know where it landed. Landed on the hook, which is good. No damage, no leaves, no roots snapped, not even these 2 pointy ones, and the bloom spike's fine. Jolly good. It's not a good blooming that's a very small spike for an Orangus, but then it's a young plant, and that's its first blooming as a plant, so okay for a first blooming. Next year I would expect it to do a bit better. Right, you can go up there and stay there this time. Stay. What else can I get at? BC Mackay, everybody said, can we keep the progress on that, keep it coming? Well, it's doing okay. The new growths are pushing on reasonably well, and we have root activity at the base. So after an awful long delay of sitting doing nothing, it is now growing, and I don't expect any of those new growths to bloom. I think if they try to bloom I might stop them anyway. I'd like that to get its strength back. That's struggled for an awful long time, and I like the blooms too much to lose it. Having got it to get going again, I do not want that gone. So that lives up in the gods, right up near the roof. Right, as I say, I can't get at everything round here, but I can get at some things. There's some of the bigger oncidiums that are easily accessible. What is that? I haven't got a clue. I've got a clue what that is. What are you then? Do you know, I really don't know what that is. It's got dark leaves and it's got two strong new growths. One pushing up in the middle and another one round the side. Too young to bloom, those new growths, and they may not, because this had a struggle with the old roots on a repot. But it's now growing roots under those new growths, so well on the mend. No tag as usual. I haven't got a clue what that, but it's doing okay. I don't need to worry about it. It's grown some roots. It's got two new growths on the go. It might even be two plants. I can't remember. And without a tag, it makes life difficult remembering, doesn't it? I did get asked about this. This is my Dendrobium lodiggesii, however you want to say it. And these are kikis. These were tiny little kikis that came off the mother plant before it went to somebody else. Who had that? I think Insa had that one. But some of these kikis have grown on quite nicely for their first year, and they've got some size to them, and some of them haven't. This area down here hasn't grown at all. Literally, hasn't even moved. This one in the centre's gone. This one's probably gone. But some are growing nicely and have produced some canes. They've finished growing for the year now, except that little one that's still got a new leaf coming. But it's coming. It's coming back, and I grow that way. I don't hang that one up. It's got a hook if ever I choose to, but at the moment I'm growing that flat, which is a way it's often found growing. So it's coming on. You know, from kikis, that's okay. They've got roots, or the bigger canes have got roots under them, which means when we get to the start of the next season, the new growth will push on at a rate of knots, because they'll have some leaves behind them and some root systems. So that next year's canes should be an awful lot bigger. And next year's canes will probably bloom the following year. These won't. And if they try, I'll stop them. It's too small, there's no strength there. Coffee. Got another of the big oncidiums in here. Get this one out. Now, when we're talking about plants in active growth, when you've got one that's maturing a cane like that and pushing up a spike, that's in active growth. Even if that bulb was fully mature and all its leaves were full size, it's still growing because it's pushing a spike up. That takes energy. But in addition to that, it's got these two new growths over here. These aren't mature yet. This is heavily in active growth. So this is using up feed. And the way to tell whether you're not giving it enough feed is to look at the old bulbs, not the new growths. Because if the old bulbs start to desiccate, either you've got a poor root system and or you're not giving it enough food. This takes energy. All this is new stuff, and underneath it is new stuff called roots. It takes energy. That's when they use the food up. And if you don't give it enough, it will use its resources, its backup resources, which are the older bulbs. So if they look as though they're starting to desiccate, you might want to up your feed or your frequency, possibly even both. That's quite a vigorous plant. Yeah. So, and we should get blooms on that. I suspect the other two new growths are going to push spikes up when it's their time, but they're a bit behind this one. You can see this one's got its bulb. These two haven't. These haven't opened up. The bulb's not swelling yet. But I suspect we will get a spike on both of these at the same time because they are almost identical. And that may well be after this one's finished. We just have to wait and see. This will be its rebloom, first rebloom, because it was in bloom when I got it, and this is what it's done since, basically. It's pushed up those growths. Oh. Right, that's all we're going to do on that shelf. But again, we're looking at, what constitutes active growth in the Oncidium Alliance. Well, and any other plant really, if you think about it. It's not just Oncidiums. We've got to do something with This over here is one of my black hair types that all that came so close to being thrown out. This was one that got treated with a systemic and seriously objected to it. Yeah, and it dumped its leaves and became bedraggled. And strictly speaking, this has still got some scale on it, but I've got a feeling the scale it's got are bodies, because this has had the hippie soap treatment, this one. So I think all we're left with is bodies that I haven't cleaned up yet. But it is growing a new growth, but notice the leaves are slightly distorted. That means it's not hydrating properly. It's got no decent roots, this plant, and this latest growth still isn't growing any roots. So this is just hanging on by the skin of its teeth. That's actually Formidable, which is I think it's in Fundibulum crossed with Lowii. So it's a primary cross, but it's only just alive. So we'll see what that does. That's a struggle, that one. That's been struggling a long time. And then you get the one behind it, if I can get it out. This is going to have to go on another shelf now. I have to be incredibly careful with this because it is now taller than the shelf. So the top of this latest cane now goes up through the shelf above it. Now obviously if I just grab it and pull it, I could take the top leaves off. Now this one hasn't been repotted yet. This one had scale at the base. This was treated with the hippie soap. There's not a sign of any scale on this plant now. So we've done that one, pretty sure. Not repotted since I got it, came from Burnham's. I love it when I do this sort of thing. There was a whole, this was in the days when they'd only just started to open after the shutdowns. And Sarah, I went there on one of the first weekends that she opened, or weekdays, whatever it was. And she said, "You'll have to excuse the mess." She said, "I haven't been able to pay people to keep the place tidy. So there's plants have fallen over, there's dead leaves everywhere. You take it as it is. We haven't got time to do all that now." So I went round in this area with these particular plants. A big one had keeled over basically and taken a load with it. So they were all like that. They were all sort of on their side, all tangled up together and everything like that. And I looked at them and I thought, that's Infundibulum. That's one of the species that I've got mixed in with at least one of my crosses. And what I could see was this cane with its leaves on and a couple of other canes, and I thought, you know, that doesn't look a bad plant. These are good sized canes. And then right down at the base I saw this, but it was only that big. It had a tiny new growth, and out of all the plants that were there, this was the one that had a strong new growth coming, which, as you can see, has now outshone all the other canes on the plant and is still growing. Still got at least one more leaf to open up here, and there's another leaf inside that one. So this is still growing, so I'm going to have to find a taller shelf for this one. It'll have to come over here with the Nobiles and the like. So that is growing exceptionally well, and it's a black hair type. In its normal environment, that would keep, it would be a continuous grower because it would come from a place that doesn't get cold really. So it would carry on growing, probably a bit slower in the drier season, but it wouldn't stop. So I've got to try and do the same. But will I need to? Probably not, because my winter temperatures are going to be lower than that would probably like, in which case it will slow up and it may even stop. And it's no good making a pot soaking wet with feed in it if the plant's not growing. I may have said that before at some point, I'm not quite sure. And this one's done the same thing, my Victoria Regina. This is the plant's natural height. This is how it has been grown in the past, and mine's done that, and it's still doing it. That's got another leaf coming. Dear, oh dear. But I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I'm not moaning that these are growing wrong. They're not growing wrong. They're growing well. That's the way to look at it. So the Victoria Regina will probably stop growing soon. It may push out another growth. It depends what its metabolism is up to, and it depends how cold it gets prior to it thinking about putting another growth up. But Victoria Regina in its natural environment is a cooler grower. It ought to be grown a little cooler than I grow it. So it's probably going to be happy in the winter, which means it might keep growing and push up another cane. That might even be as big as that one. It's getting a bit unwieldy, that. Long and lanky, but still well worth having. And then we get the likes of this, that just will not behave. And I don't care because it blooms. But this is the sweet pinky Momoko. That was a mass of flowers for some considerable time up here, put on an absolutely brilliant show. But what it's done again is, these are last year's canes, these big stonking ones here, or that one and whichever one of these, this one I think, and it's bloomed halfway down the cane at the wrong time of year. It was back in the summer. We were supposed to bloom in the spring. Cuff. It just won't get itself settled. It won't settle into a normal routine, whatever that might be. But because this has bloomed down to there, that's the lowest nodule, we've still got here, here, here and here that are capable of blooming. But they'll probably bloom in the spring. So this last year's growth is splitting itself, yeah, into two blooming periods, as did this one, or as has this one. It's bloomed right near the top but not near the bottom. But then in addition to that, we've got this year's growths. We've got this one and this one here. And I hate to say it, but that growth has finished growing. That's its terminal leaf. And it didn't get as tall as last year's. Cuff. However, this one round here, have you finished? Yep, terminal leaf. That's only a little bit shorter than last year's. Not a lot. But two growths for this year. They may do exactly the same in the spring as the previous year's growth and bloom at the top bit and not at the bottom bit. It just plays games, that one. It just will not behave in a normal nobly fashion, if there is such a thing. So as soon as you get into the hybrids, there could be other little things lurking in there that are messing up the way it's growing. You never find out what the hell's in them, although that has got a name. I probably could find out. Now, what have we got over here? Look at that. This one, this is a relatively recent repot, and as a dendrobium it probably looks quite like a lot of my other dendrobiums until you look closely, and it's not. What's different about this one? Now, you might not be able to see it on camera, but look at those leaves. Type of cane, yeah, very similar to lots of things I've got, but look at those leaves. These are rigid. These are like cactus leaves. They're absolutely solid. There's no give in them at all. They're really, really thick and fleshy. So what's this one then? Well, it's unlikely to be like any of the others I've got, and that would be exactly right. This is my only antelope type, and it is growing quite differently. Now this, some people may remember me getting this repotted because it was tucked inside pieces of cocoa shell wrapped around some sphagnum moss and tied tight, and that's how it was grown. Now unfortunately that cocoa shell breaks down and starts to rot, which means it gets soft enough for the roots to push through it, but because it's rotting it kills the roots, so their growing tip gets lost, buried somewhere in there. The moss has long since died and gone acidic, so you end up with something that's almost impossible to repot unless you've got one of those. And if you've got one of those, you get some of those down there. Now, you can't see them at the edge of the pot yet, but that growth has got new roots because I didn't end up with many saved from here. So what we've got here is quite a large plant relatively, with quite a lot of old canes that has been grown from a seedling. Tiny little seedling canes, next size up again, and then the latest size and a new growth coming up behind. Where or when will that flower? I haven't got a clue. Now in theory it might produce some spikes on here, but I doubt it. Which probably means we're relying on this one to get some blooms. And because I haven't had an antelope type dendrobium long enough to rebloom, I did have a really nice one that just keeled over. But this one I'm planning on not keeling over because it's doing okay. No sign of rot anywhere. And it's in the cocoa husk, which you might think, well, isn't that going to be difficult controlling the watering in the winter? No, it's not. Because if you don't pour much in there, it doesn't get very wet. Yeah? You know, this will be watered carefully through the winter because it will be cooler than it would like. And I'd have liked this to have got up here before the winter got here, because it's going to slow down, I suspect. We shall see. But blooms will come on this cane one day, but I don't know when. I suspect sometime next year. But I don't know whether this is a late winter, early spring type bloomer, or a late spring on into summer bloom. It could even be an autumn bloomer, I don't know. So, but that is Tangerinum species. So that's my only antelope type. I would like more, but you don't come across them very often at all. And now that I've lost access to the EU, I'm not going to come across them very often. But nonetheless, that came from Speciotics, UK seller. Yeah, so. But I didn't hold out a lot of hope at repotting, I must admit, but that new growth's pushing on nicely. It's got a lot of reserves, that plant, so it can survive on its reserves until those new roots grow. That I already knew. So. And with that seller, you get some pretty good pictures of the plant you're buying. And if there's several on the go, they're all incredibly similar. You don't necessarily get a picture of one that's a lot better than the others that are for sale in the set. They're all pretty much the same. So we've got that. And we've got something I've just spotted up the back here. Let's see how much I can knock over with this. You dare. So right at the back, is this. Oh boy, is this top heavy. Again, it's done a good one. Now what this had, this is, has this got a name? Yes it has, hasn't it? This is the KO Green, came from Jeff's. And I grabbed this because it looked like a reasonably healthy plant with this cane on it, with 3 spike stumps on it. So it had bloomed from the top of this cane before, and it had these lovely purple stripes on the cane that I really like. And a nice shade of green on the leaves. One older cane that's also bloomed, and a little stumpy one down here. So I thought that's not bad at all. So what do we do then? We try and grow a nice new growth, at least somewhere near as big as the previous one. Well, there you go. Go on, rock it ahead, won't you? Make it so top heavy it won't stand up. But if you look in the apex, we got a spike. So first of all, we can now confirm that this is a Phalaenopsis type, because it's not going to be anything else, not with a spike coming right out of the top like that. And we're going to find out what it looks like. And boy, am I looking forward to that, because it's got green in the name. So it's going to be a Phalaenopsis type dendrobium. So it could have as little as 2 or 3 blooms on it. It could have a dozen. Who knows? It depends on the strength of the plant and how close to its ideal conditions it's getting. But I would say with a cane grown on like that, that needs tying in soon before it flops over, I think that may well be a good spike. Just the one at the moment. But the fact that this one has got 3 stumps on doesn't mean to say they all bloomed at the same time. This can bloom on successive years on the same cane. First one is virtually always out of the apex, and then possibly the following year it may have pushed the other 2 out. It might have pushed all 3 out together in ideal conditions. But they don't only bloom once. The Phalaenopsis type can bloom again on the same cane, just a bit lower down. Want somewhere to stand that where it's not going to knock something over, or more importantly not fall over. Let's prop it up against those blooms. Because there's one more thing at the back of this shelf that I wanted to show you. Ugh. Again, I've had this one a while now, but it's never bloomed. And this is a Latoria type although it might actually be some fancy cross of some description, but it's a Latoria type. And it's Aussie's Sweetness crossed with Tapiniense, which, if the Tapiniense is actually a Latoria species, then that confirms it's a Latoria. But again, we have a lovely plant. I was more than happy buying this plant. This looked a nice plant. Good number of canes. It's been grown on from a seedling, and when I repotted it, I'd have removed the tiniest bulbs, probably leafless. It's grown a massive root system, and then we get a nice balanced plant like that. So we grow a new growth, and what does a new growth do? Grow half as big again. I'm really not complaining, but we have that at the apex of this new growth. Now that is nothing more than a sheath at the moment, but given the strength of the plant, the overall energy in that plant, when this gets up to the point where the plant is thinking, do we do blooms or not, how much reserves have we got? Because we've used up a fair bit of them pushing this new cane up. But we were lucky, we had a keeper who kept us fed and watered while this was growing, so we haven't used up our reserves growing that. So we've probably got enough to bloom. And that's how the plant, I know they haven't really got a mind, but that's how their hormonal impact works. There is a total energy for the plant, and it says, right, we need a new growth, because we're trying to reproduce constantly. Right? So we need new growth. Right, let's push up a new growth. How much of our energy are we going to use? Are we going to drain our existing energy to push that new growth up? Because we're going to have to do it, so it'll carry on. Now, if it's reduced its energy levels by producing the new growths, the chances are it'll decide not to bloom. It'll wait. However, if it's used up some energy to produce that new growth and still has energy to spare, that's when they bloom. It's all very clever stuff. And you can't see it, and you can't prove it, but that's how they work. Oh. Let's try and put this shelf back together now. I shall put that back in a minute. Right, so let's have a look at some plants. There was another one. Where was it? There's another one I wanted to show. Oh, the bobcat. And this one too is, I have to be incredibly careful because the spike is just below the shelf above it. But it's got a cane that's slightly longer. So the first thing that will touch the shelf above is the cane. And that reminds me to go careful. Now this is branching now. I've staked this one. And the reason I staked it, because I thought, if I'm going to take that to the show on Saturday, then obviously I need a nice upright cane for this, you know, for that. And is that going to be ready for the show next Saturday? Like hell. Not even close. It's going to be another 3 weeks, I suspect. 2 to 3 weeks before these blooms open. But the good thing with this is it's showing good signs of branching at almost every joint. That's definitely a branch. Yeah? So I'm hoping we get a branched spike for the first few nodes and then nice large blooms farther up. Still growing. Hasn't finished yet. And again, you know, have we got an actively growing plant? Well, look at the size of that bulb and then look at the size of the latest one. They are the same height, yeah? They've got the same number of leaves. This one's got a massive root system generated, and growing this and pushing that spike up has not drained the old bulb. It's producing enough energy to do that without the support of what's going on behind it, and a lot of that is due to the extensive root system, and again it's got a keeper that feeds and waters it, so it's pushing on nicely. Now in theory this bulb is still swelling, although it's probably slowed up if not stopped because of the spike, but it may well carry on providing it gets given the appropriate resources. And maybe my bulb will be as big as that one, in which case I'll be over the moon. I suspect it'll be a bit smaller. So, there's that one. Yeah, again, only just managing to stay on that shelf, and it is only just. I have to bring the tray out and put the plant on it before I put it back in. And what we've done with that one is we've positioned it in such a way that the branches should all curve round and face in the same direction, so that we don't get blooms facing all over the place. You need to go careful when a plant's coming into bloom, well, depending on what you want. A plant like that's coming into bloom, that has blooms coming out from all directions on a spike, if you keep moving it, they will do that. They'll come out in all directions because it doesn't know what's going on. Yeah? Because if you want all those blooms in the main to face the same way and put on a really good show from that face of the plant, then don't move it. You know, when you pick it up and water it, or do whatever, put it back in the same place and make sure that that face of the plant, the part of the plant that you think looks best from the front, that's the bit that faces the strongest light. And then all your blooms will head towards that light. And it'll look quite a lot better than it would have done otherwise. If that's what you want. Some people like everything to look exactly natural. But most of the time in the wild, you don't get a directional light. I mean, in theory you do, because it rises over there and sets over there, and it doesn't go round that side, it only comes round this side, so there is a direction. But 180 degrees plus of that is what it gets during the day. So it's not like a window where it's only coming in from one direction. So look round some plants. There isn't much else that's liable to bloom. No. My cattleyas are going to have another hippie soap session, but I've got to wait for I've got two choices. I've either got to wait till I've got a predictable sunny day so that I've got heat in here and I can fire the fans up to full blast, or I'm going to have to put the fans on full blast and use the heater to generate the heat, if you see what I mean, so that the things actually dry off nicely. So, I mean, those of you who grow Draculas, my Dracula Bella, the notorious bud blaster, well, the bud that's on it's still there. Now, that hasn't turned brown. So, I mean, Lynn would definitely know, because I think she's managed to get some blooms on hers. That's still viable, that bud, although it hasn't moved for a while. And if last year's anything to go by, it may well just go brown and drop off. But we've got some roots showing in places on this plant now, and we've got another spike starting. So, and this is starting at the time of year when it's more likely to be viable. Yeah. So this is put on quite a bit of root growth in the pot and all around the top of the pot, and it's pushed up some new leaves. So we've got some nice shiny green leaves instead of the spotty older ones. And we got a new spike coming. I suspect we will get more spikes now that this heat's dropped back. So we may get a bloom on that. I mean, that is in fact my only Dracula. I have a, whatever the cross between a Masdevallia and a Dracula is. I do have one of those, but it's not a pure Dracula like this one is. That is my only one. And let's see if I can get this out. One of my Restrepias with the larger blooms has pushed out a couple of blooms recently. Now I don't know how close I can get these to the camera and still focus, but this one's relatively recent from Burnham's. It's been repotted. It's got what looks like a dead leaf, which it is really, but it's got a kiki growing around the back of it, so I'm leaving it because I want to grow that kiki on and start a separate plant, because as Restrepias go, this one's pretty good. This is, what does it say? It says it's Sanguinea, with A in capital, A in quotes afterwards, capital A. Probably means it's one of Sarah's. But the blooms on it are absolutely superb. I don't know how close I can get and still stay in focus, but these are stunning coloured blooms. And as Restrepias go, they're quite large. That's got 3 on the go at the moment. But this is the bit I like. The new growths are nice and tall, and they're coming out reasonably clean. They're not too kinked, not too crinkled. So it's obviously getting just about enough hydration. Could do with a little bit more, but not, not too bad. And we have a leaf there, with a hole in it. Do we have a slug? Or has it been knocked against something? Who knows? But the new growths on this are a nice green colour, and we've got blooms, so I'm pleased with that one. That's as Restrepias go, that's a nice one. And the plant will look better the more new growths it gets, because it will then look more green than it does now. Right. Can't get much else that I want to show you at the moment. Where are we time-wise? We're not getting too daft, are we? Can't even see the time. Oh God, we're up to an hour. That's going to have to do. It's all very well. It'll take the rest of the day to process this. That's a long one. I do apologise. I hope your interest has stayed right till the end, but this is the end. I don't think I've ever done one an hour long before. So thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. Lots of bits and pieces, and as I said, the patrons of the channel are now becoming quite important, in as much as I may well be paying for a couple of properties for a while. Somehow or other I've got to keep this lot going. If we want the channel to continue, then I have to have somewhere for these to be suitable for them to grow, and keep the collection together. This is the whole idea of this sort of thing. So if you can consider becoming a patron, it's you're making, effectively what you're doing is you're making a contribution each month for the channel to be able to continue, hopefully in a similar way. As I said, I may have to downsize a little bit, but I may have to change in as much as we've still got a conservatory. It'll be a different conservatory, and as far as I know it gets hardly any sun, so I won't have the heat issue. Yeah. So but I don't know whether it's double glazed. It might take a bit of extra warmth in the winter, but whatever. And I might move some of the plants into the house, so I become a home grower as well, in which case I might get the grow lights out. Yeah, so things could change a bit that might actually make a bit of a difference and a bit more variety. That depends where I end up, basically. So thanks for watching. Boy, that's gone on. If you've watched all of this in one go, you really ought to have better things to do. But I hope you've enjoyed the bits and bobs, looking at some plants in particular, chat about each one, and obviously some chat up front about what's coming up. It is worrying, not niggly worry where I don't go to sleep or anything like that, but in the back of my mind I'm mulling things over all the time. It's quite a big deal what's coming up, and my planning skills hopefully will make it run as smooth as I possibly can. We'll see. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.